former White House press secretary and NewsNation contributor, Sean Spicer. Good morning, Sean. Always good to see you. What do you expect Trump's tone to be during this debate on Thursday?
Well, Marni, I mean, elections are about the future. And the question is, does President Trump get on stage and heed the advice of a lot of people who have told him you had a much better record for 4 years than Joe Biden does for 3.5 on issues that people care about, the inflation, border security, energy independence. And if he sticks to that, I think he's going to have a great night. But as you've mentioned, and I think we've seen, President Trump can get up there and go after people in a very personal way, in a very rhetorical way. And if he does that, I don't think he necessarily loses anything, but I don't know that he will gain as much as if he just sticks to the issues.
You heard former President Trump there talk about Biden getting a shot in the tushy before the debate, and there's been a lot of question about his State of the Union address and whether or not he had anything to help boost his energy prior to that. Do you make anything of these accusations that the president needs something to up his energy?
Well, I think a lot of it is speculative. Obviously, we don't have any substantive evidence that the president took something. But there's obviously, I mean, if you think about it, there's a range of stuff. I took a long drive a few days ago and I had a couple energy drinks with me. I mean, there's a range of things from energy drinks to B12 shots all the way up to prescription medication. And so the question is something being done? But I mean, no one would fault somebody if they took a bunch of energy drinks prior to a long drive or a big event or something like that. And so there's a very big range of things that you can do. But I have no doubt that prior to that, think about it, a runner carbo loads before a big race the night before. So getting ready for an event is nothing new. The question is, to what extent is it possibly happening?
Age is an issue for both of these candidates. How closely do you think Americans will be paying attention to their cognitive ability, their ability to think on their feet on the issues that matter?
Tremendous. And the one thing I would tell you is that I think we get caught up in the narrative that age, as if it's a number, matters. I think the second part of what you asked is the bigger one, which is, does that mental acuity come through? Does the stamina come through? Look, there's no question. President Trump may be 78 years old, but I worked around him for years. That guy acts like a 50-year-old. And as a 50-year-old, actually, I should probably revise that down. But I think what people are looking for is, are you up to the job? And the number isn't the big issue as much as, do they look like they've got the energy to do it, the task, the focus, et cetera. I think Biden's the one with a problem on that. Yes, Trump's number is just a few shy of Biden's years. But no one's questioning whether Trump has the energy. I've said this before. I think, in fact, most people would like him to take the energy down a couple notches. So that's not the same issue that Trump and Biden have. Biden's got to prove that he's got his game. And I think that that's why what you saw earlier in that clip that you played is that President Biden is clearly resting. This is a 9 o'clock debate. To stay up till 9 o'clock and be on your game is a feat for an older person. There's no question about it.
Yeah, it's a feat for me. It's way past my bedtime.
I say that.
I get up at 4 in the morning.
I say that as somebody. Look, I just didn't want to say it as candidly as you did, but I'm with you. Like, after 9 o'clock, I don't know what I want to. I don't want to be on my A game, and I think that there's no question that 7 days at Camp David, man, this guy better come rested and raring to go.
Pull back the curtain for us, Sean. You've been there and part of debate prep. I mean, what does that look like exactly for both of these candidates who have so much experience debating and holding this office?
Well, I'll take President Biden first, just because they've been very public about how they're doing that, and that's more of the traditional style. I've been involved in several of those where you literally set up the room. And as I said, the reason that I mentioned the 9 o'clock hour is at some point during the week, you literally want to run this at that time. You want to make sure that it's one thing to run debate prep at 9 in the morning when you're spry, you just got up and you're ready to go. It's another thing to run it at 9 o'clock at night when you're ready to go to bed. So they're going to be doing that throughout the week. They're going to set up podiums. They're going to run through attack lines, both pro and con. How is Biden going to get the offensive, et cetera? President Trump, I've done this with him. I've briefed him. He is much more of a free-flowing guy. You go into a room, he'll sit behind a desk, maybe he's in a chair, he's having over a meal, and you're throwing issues at him and you're going back and forth. It's much less formal, much more relaxed, and just conversational, if you will. And that's why I think he loves being out at those rallies where he's kind of testing lines, seeing what the feedback is, et cetera.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.